Hey guys, we're coming back to vectors, and today I'm gonna share my opinion about how to subtract vectors. Remember before we used to practice with additions. So addition is pretty easy, we need to use head to tail. But what about vector subtraction? In case when you have vector A, you have vector B, and you want to make the difference between them. For example, you want to subtract. Okay, so let's drop the vector A. Let's set up in this way. This is the vector A, and we want to subtract vector B, which is like goes that way. Okay, so that's vector B. How to be in this case? How to get this difference? The answer is pretty simple. You can cope with vectors as almost with simple numbers. Remember before, we used to switch and swap A plus B, and actually that will be equal to B plus A. Why not to use the same tricks when we subtract two vectors? So what I mean, instead of subtracting, I bet that we can do addition, but with negative vector. So remember before, we used to discuss an opposite vector, opposite to a given one. That's called a negative vector, negative vector. So what's the sense for that? The sense is pretty clear. Instead of subtracting, we're actually adding vector A with the opposite vector to the vector B. Okay, so let's set up the opposite vector for vector B. And actually still here, we're going to use head to tail rule. So we just make direction the opposite as that one. So it's negative B. And now we simply translate so that the tip of the previous vector becomes the starting point for new vector, which is negative B. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to add them up. So I use the blue color for the resultant vector. So that will be equivalent to new vector C. And here you do the same as you did before. You just simply connect the very starting point of the very first vector A with the ending point of the last vector B. So basically use triangle rule, or what is called head to tail. Alright, so let's connect, and that is going to be vector C, which is equal to the difference A minus B. So here's the rule. Instead of just simply subtracting, you need to use addition with the opposite vector to the vector B. And that will be the resultant vector C. So hope it's clear, and that's the rule. To subtract one vector from another, we simply add its negative. So instead of B, we'll use negative B, and in this case, we simply add them. Alright, so I hope it's pretty clear for you guys. So let's set up maybe just one random problem. So let's consider one problem. So let's say we have points Q, R, S, and so probably P. Okay, so we've got four random points, and we need to simplify the following vector expressions. So for the first expression, I would consider the difference between, so I randomly connect 2 points with a vector, let's say QR, and I simply subtract SR. Okay, so let's drop it. So in order to find that, we need to set up 3 points. Say this is Q, this is random point R, and let's say somewhere it's going to be the point S. So the first vector has vector QR. It goes that way. I just adjust the point. Okay, that's point R, and this is the vector QR. And then we are going to subtract SR. So vector SR goes that way, right? But instead of drawing vector SR, I just better rearrange my expression and say, okay, instead of difference, I'm gonna add with the opposite vector to SR. So basically I swap the points, right? And now my vector starts from R and ends up in S. So basically I add the negative vector RS, which goes down. So one more time. Okay, so basically I am going to add the negative vector, negative RS, right? There's some problem here, I guess. Yeah, sorry for that. So I swap the sign and I add actually negative SR. Yeah, that's my bad. I didn't write correctly. So I add negative SR, yes, according to the rule. So, and finally, QR is added with negative SR becomes RS. So I add basically RS. Sorry, that's my bad. However, the writing, the drawing was correct. So RS. And now I just simply connecting them. QS is going to be a resultant vector. Okay, so QS as a resultant vector. Hope you understand this. It's pretty simple. That's QS as a result. And let's consider another point, because we're given 4 points. Now let's consider point P. So we can complete, say, several additions, probably several subtractions. So I'm going to consider the following. So let's set up QR, subtract PS, and subtract SR. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So first of all, I put random points. So let's say Q, R, so maybe S here. And let's say the last one is going to be P. All right. So what I'm going to draw, I'm going to draw the first vector, QR. It's here, okay? Then instead of subtracting PS, I'm going to add vector RS, because look, one more time, QR, I'm adding vector negative PS, but this means that we can swap the points and say, okay, we add in simply vector SP instead. So that's expression in brackets, negative PS is equal to SP, all right? So also we add negative SR, which is simply becomes, I'm again swapping the points, RS, to get this vector as the opposite, and RS becomes the vector that we're actually looking for. Okay, now let's drop all those vectors. First, SP, it's here, and RS, well, they actually goes in pretty nice manner. Okay, RS and SP. Yeah. So how to find resultant? So what's the equation we have? Sorry, not equation, but rearrange expression. So we can continue that and say, okay, we've got QR plus SP and plus RS. And you see that everywhere we swapped all negatives, so all subtraction we change into addition. That's a powerful tool. So you need to apply whenever you have this sort of problems. Especially it's very essential when you cope with geometry and vector geometry. So in this case, I set up the red color for the resultant vector, QR, SP, and RS. So here I'm going to use the polygon rule. Just remember, this is the snake, right? And that's the direction. So it's sort of clockwise. So actually we need to make an anti-clockwise direction so that to have a proper resultant vector? Oh, basically we connect this very starting point with the very end, sort of displacement, right? And applied vectors problems. Okay, so QP is going to be the resultant vector, and this is a result for the difference QR minus PS minus SR. It's pretty easy, guys. Hope you understand that, how to subtract vector. If you actually watch all my previous video dedicated to addition, that's not a problem for you right now. So just use the swapping rule, use the negative or opposite vector, and you can do subtraction problems in a pretty easy way that I showed you before. Okay, hope you like that. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. If you're new ones, there are pretty lots of video in my sets, so try to explore, try to give some comments what actually you like the most. Maybe you like to see new videos for new topics, for a specific topic if you like. So no problem, I can give it, and I can give you feedback and create video up to your requests. So enjoy.